Welcome to a late night edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. Guys and girls, you know the drill. I'm a retired New York City police detective. And if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Hey, tonight I wanted to bring to you quick, and I had no plans of doing this, but breaking in the Delphi case. Richard Allen makes multiple confessions and statements in prison. It came out during a court hearing yesterday. We're going to get into it. We'll talk about it quickly. I don't have a lot of time because it's late. As you know, I go to bed early. So this 10, 11 o'clock Eastern time is kind of late for me. But I want to say a special thank you to you, the subscribers, the Patreon supporters, the channel members, moderators, and all the folks who positively engage in this community. You guys are what makes it a great place, and I give thanks and praise to each and every one of you. Ed Wallace is on a vacation. He's cruising to Bermuda, I believe, or is visiting the island of Bermuda, and so Ed is trying to kick back and get some R&R. So Ed, I hope you're enjoying your vacation, and we'll see you when you get home. So the Delphi case, just by a show of hands in the chat. I know we haven't been speaking about this. I haven't really, we haven't gone live with many of the videos. I maybe did a handful of them with Ed, and I did one with Dr. Joni Johnston. But by a show of hands here, who has been following this case? Again, it's been going back from February of 2017. Libby German and Abby Williams. Just a horrific case that's been dragging on for so long. Many different twists and turns in the case, but Richard Allen basically is being held, and a trial is set. The trial date is set for January of 2024. So it looks like a lot of you guys in the chat have been following this, some from day one. Nat B from Canada says since day one. Doreen's got her hands up. Norma Guerrera says, me, fax girl. Sean B, good to see you. Thank you, little bit. So quite a few of you guys have been watching this case. But so breaking yesterday. I'm just going to play it quickly for you guys, just in case some of you guys might not have seen this coverage. But Richard Allen has been alleged to have confessed 5 or 6 times to killing Abby and Libby in prison. Jail and prison are 2 different places. We're going to get into that. He's being housed in a maximum security facility. Westville Correctional is a maximum security correctional facility, and they never housed somebody. He's the only one there that is awaiting a trial. And they're really not set up for what he needs to be held for. He should be, by all means, held at a local county jail, a local jail. But for security reasons, the judge ordered that he be held at a maximum security facility. And if you look at him, it looks like his mental and physical health is definitely ailing. And listen, there's many different opinions on this, and many people will say, well, too bad. He stands accused of killing these 2 girls. Let him rot. But we need him to be alive to stand trial, right? So if he doesn't make it to 6 months, 6.5 months, fast forward, he definitely is deteriorating tremendously. And Fuzzy Doxy, thank you for, let me highlight Fuzzy Doxy real quick, because she was the one who sent me the video about this. So thank you, Fuzzy Doxy, for always looking out. You're the best. So let's play this piece. Let's play it. I started out with it on the screen. And they're going to talk about Richard Allen here, and look at him. We have before and after pictures from when he was taken into custody, and he was a lot heavier and a lot healthier looking. If you look at him here, he looks like almost like a cancer patient. And I hate to even use the cancer word, right? I hate cancer, cancer, right? Hold on. Let me get this case off of here. F cancer. So, but he doesn't look good. He doesn't look good at all. And be that as it may, let's let this rip.
Breaking news, a huge day of hearings in the Delphi murders case.
We now have a trial date for that case, and we really heard some explosive new information about what's happened while Allen has been awaiting that trial.
Senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel was in the courtroom today. He actually begins our team coverage tonight. Bob, fill us in.
Well, the date we've got circled on our calendars now is January 8th, 2024. That is when jury selection is now scheduled to begin for the trial of Richard Allen, and we're told that that trial will likely last about 3 weeks. Now, the bombshell that we heard about here in court today, the Carroll County prosecutor said Richard Allen has made incriminating statements in prison. Prosecutor Nick McClelland said Allen, and I quote, confessed 5 or 6 times to killing the girls. He did not go into more detail than that. Allen's defense attorney said the alleged statements were generic, and he said, quote, the jury's going to hear all about that when the time is right. Now, we did not have a hearing today on ballistics evidence. We were expecting that to happen, but that's now going to happen later to determine if the state can tell jurors about some ballistic testing that allegedly ties an unspent bullet at the crime scene to a gun found at Allen's home. I was in court just inches away from Richard Allen, and he looked very frail and unsteady today. His health was a big part of today's hearing. His defense wants the judge to move Allen out of the maximum security prison where he's currently being held and move him to the Cass County Jail, which is just about 20 minutes from Delphi. They told the judge the state prison is having a terrible impact on Allen's mental and physical health to the point where he's having trouble assisting in his own defense. The warden at Westville Correctional Facility testified that Allen is the only pretrial inmate held at the maximum security prison right now, and for the last 5 years that the staff have been there. And Allen's attorneys say they can't get any privacy at the prison because they say all of their meetings with their client are being videotaped by prison staff. Today, the judge ordered that to stop, and there's a whole lot of it.
See, so these are big things. I'm going to let this play in a minute. But, you know, the privacy issue of him being recorded and the judge issuing an order, this is going to be all the things his defense is going to use to his advantage. But also just for the folks who are in the chat saying, well, if he confessed 5 or 6 times, why is there a trial? They compare this to, say, like a Chris Watts, right? Chris Watts didn't plead not guilty. Richard Allen did plead not guilty. If you can remember, when he was taken into custody, he pled the fifth and refused to talk. And he was, you know, again, much more coherent, much more healthier. And I have my notes that I keep referring to here. He pled the fifth and immediately lawyered up. So he invoked his Fifth Amendment. He worked, this was a local guy, worked at the local CBS. It's also been reported that he processed pictures for one of the decedent's families. You know, again, there's so many moving parts of this thing, but just because he is making these spontaneous utterances or saying that he's admitting to guilt in prison, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be no trial. He's already entered his plea of not guilty, and his attorneys are saying that he's saying this because he's delusional. Of course, his defense attorneys are going to say he doesn't mean that. It's because of the undue stress and the duress that he's under. He's being tortured. They're saying that he's been being walked around that facility just like all the other prisoners who were in maximum security on a leash. I don't know if any of you guys heard that, but they say he's being walked around and moved around within the correctional facility at Westville on a leash. So these are all things that the defense will use to their benefit. And the shell casing, it's actually not a shell casing, it was a live round that was recovered, is also in question, and they were arguing to have that evidence removed, but it wasn't a spent shell as everyone's talking about. It's an actual live round that has not been fired. And we heard and saw something like this in what was the case? It was somebody's got to jar my memory, but the woman was found on the side of the road with burns on her. It was alleged that her daughter and her boyfriend were involved in it. Somebody please say the name quick. Give me the name of that case. We covered it, and it's kind of late at night, and plus I'm just not remembering it. But there was a live round recovered at the scene also at that case. So, but let's let the rest of this play, and hopefully somebody will say the name that I'm looking for of the case. So Debbie Collier, thank you, Fuzzy. She didn't say the last name, but I finished it. She said Debbie, I said Collier, and then here's Nat and Faithful. And man, I love my true crime enthusiasts. I love you guys because I knew that I can count on you. Louisiana lady, she's there chiming in with Debbie Collier. That's all I need is the first word. Once I saw Fuzzy Doxy, that was the first one that I saw. Debbie, but I'm sure it was other people that said it first. But thank you guys. Yes, there was a live round, ballistic round recovered at the scene with Debbie Collier, and this is the same thing here. So let's let the rest of this play, and I'll be back on with you because I got a couple of other things to play for you guys.
Taped by prison staff. Today, the judge ordered that to stop, and there's a whole lot of issues left in the coming weeks and months for Judge Fran Gall to be deciding. Right now, my colleague John Durand is joining me. John, you were here at court all day, and again, there's a lot here. Explain what's coming up and what lies ahead.
Yeah, well, Bob, we got a long way to go, at least 6 months until that murder trial gets started. Judge Gall still has a lot of motions to decide on before that does get started, including what was supposed to be the most contentious piece of today's hearing that's getting pushed to another day altogether. And that was Richard Allen's defense team motioning to suppress ballistic evidence in the case. Allen's attorneys have raised questions about the state police crime lab's tests that investigators say links an unfired bullet at the crime scene to his gun. We'll hear those arguments another day, but no date is set for that hearing. The judge is also considering the release of unsealed documents in the case. These documents could provide more insight into the probable cause for the arrest of Richard Allen. Tonight, Allen is currently on the way back to Westville Correctional, a maximum security prison. Allen's attorneys want him moved to the Cass County Jail, which is much closer to here in Delphi. The prosecution says this potential move is only about convenience for Allen's attorneys. So the judge heard those arguments today. However, we'll be making a decision another day. Jenny, Felicia, a lot can and most likely will come.
So I don't see it just as convenience for the defense. I see it for also to keep Richard Allen alive, because if he continues like this, and look, he was arrested, and correct me if I'm wrong about these dates. Richard Allen was arrested, I believe, October 28th of 2022. So October 2022, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, 8 months ago, right? Not even a full 8 months, 7 months and some change. And he went from really looking like he was eating well and healthy and, not fat, but, in decent physical health to what he looks like now. And that's concerning because we have another 6 months to go. And if he continues on that route, this does not look good. So I think moving him to somewhere else where he will maybe be able to have access to his attorneys. And listen, you guys know
a trial date is now.
You guys know me. I'm not for the perps. I'm not trying to say let's baby this guy, but let's keep him alive so he could stand trial, so we can find out what's going on, or what happened, what kind of evidence they have. There's a ton of notes that I have taken here. But the bottom line is that this guy looks bad, and I want to show you another picture of him. This is another angle. I'm going to make it full screen for you. But I mean, look at him there, guys. I mean, how many people, by a show of hands, think that this is? I mean, another 6 months from now, if he continues on in this fashion, and again, I hated to use the cancer word, but this is what you see when you have people that are, on chemotherapy. I mean, he really looks frail. His mental health, they're talking about that he's not making sense. His attorneys are saying all of these 5 or 6 confessions or whatever he said, which we don't know exactly what he did say. There's a gag order in this case, just like in the Kohlberger case, there's a gag order. So he's definitely in bad shape, Lorna McKenzie. There's no doubt about that. And if I put the pictures side by side of his arrests from earlier, and you're going to see it in one of these pieces, it's not looking good. Let's let this play.
Set for the suspect in the Delphi murders.
The man accused of murdering Abby Williams and Libby German will face a jury in about 6.5 months. Richard Allen was in court for nearly 5 hours today.
And our news crews were in the courtroom all day as well. That includes 13 Investigates senior reporter Bob Siegel.
He begins our live team coverage tonight from Carroll County. Bob.
Well, we now know Richard Allen's trial date is set for January. Judge Fran Gall set jury selection for January 8th, 2024, and we are told to expect 3 weeks for the trial. Now, we also heard a bombshell in court today. Carroll County prosecutor Nick McLeland said that Richard Allen has made incriminating statements while he's being held in prison awaiting his trial. McLeland said Allen, and I quote, confessed 5 or 6 times to killing the girls. He didn't give any more details other than that. Allen's defense attorney told the judge.
That's huge. You see, that is huge that he confessed 5 or 6 times to killing these girls. But his defense, again, is going to say that he is not of sound mind and that he is due to the conditions that he's in. And we're going to hear about some of the conditions. Again, I talked about him being shackled and strapped to his body, his hands strapped to his body, almost like a straitjacket, and walked around on a leash. Those are all things that the defense is going to use when this trial kicks off, if in fact it does kick off. And they're looking at a date of January, I believe, I think I wrote it down, January 8th of 2024. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, January 8th, 2024. And it's supposed to last about 3 weeks, according to the court hearing from yesterday. All right. Yes, Pete. Late night with DutyRon. I don't do this often. I don't do these late night ones often. But I thought that this was important because a lot of people have been talking about it. A lot of people have been sending me messages. So let's listen to the rest of this.
Judge, the statements that were allegedly made, said Allen, and I quote, confessed 5 or 6 times to killing the girls. He didn't give any more details other than that. Allen's defense attorney told the judge the statements that were allegedly made by the defendant were generic. And he said, quote, the jury is going to hear all about that when the time is right. So the other big news that happened in court today is actually what did not happen in court. We expected the judge to hold a suppression hearing on whether to allow ballistics evidence in the case and whether that's going to be admissible. That did not happen. According to the state, they have tests that link an unfired bullet at the crime scene to a gun found in Allen's house. The defense wants the evidence thrown out, saying that it's based on questionable evidence. The judge announced that she is going to hold a hearing on that at a later date. We don't know that yet. So most of today's hearing focused on another very important issue, whether Richard Allen is going to remain in a maximum security state prison or move closer here to Carroll County. Samantha Johnson was in court sitting right next to me today. She heard all the testimony. And what we heard, well, first of all, it lasted hours. And it was fascinating.
It was fascinating. And as a reminder, this all comes about because the defense is saying right now that Allen's mental and physical health is deteriorating because he's in this maximum security unit. I've had the privilege of seeing Allen every time he's been in hearings yet this year. And we know, apparently, according to just the conditions that we've seen over the past few months, the words I wrote down to describe him today were weak and shallow feeling, also giving off a timid expression as well. But today we know that both sides agreed that this original safekeeping order that was filed in November of last year, we know that they say that was based on potential threats. The exact words they used were speculative safety concerns. And the sheriff at the time says he was being proactive by asking that Allen be moved out of Carroll County. Witnesses today testified, though, that there was no threat at the time, nor have there been any direct threats to Richard Allen. However, we did hear from the Westville warden today who said that he would be concerned for Richard Allen's safety if he were moved out of this maximum security unit. In fact, we know that we heard from another Westville worker today who said that in his 5 years of working at this prison, that Richard Allen is the only pre-trial inmate they've ever had in this segregation maximum security unit. So the defense today is arguing that this is all about equal protection. They told us in court today that their goal is really to come up with a solution to get better access to Allen, to help him prepare for this defense. They even offered other options potentially to house Allen. We know Cass County was one of the counties being mentioned. We heard from their sheriff today. Hours of back and forth debate on this. And then, of course, Judge Gohl deciding that she was going to take both sides of this argument under advisement. No decision today, but of course, we do expect more in the coming days or coming weeks.
And a lot of what we heard in court today focused on Richard Allen's poor health. Yeah. And so we certainly want to explain more about that. And coming up at 5:30, we're going to explain why Richard Allen is now under video surveillance 24 hours a day. That came out in court today. That's coming up just in a little bit here at 5:30.
So I want to say this too, is I think the procedure in these maximum security units is the 24-hour video surveillance. They want to watch the defendant. They want to keep an eye on him, make sure he doesn't kill himself, right? Doesn't commit suicide. It's all part of, and we heard Anthony Ganji from Tier Talk. I'll invite him back on to discuss this case again. The primary goal of the Department of Corrections, whether it's on the state, federal, or local level, is prisoner safety. And we get angry at that. I mean, how many people here in the chat get angry about that? Because we feel like, all right, so these are bad guys and girls. Why is the primary concern their safety? Well, in the Department of Corrections, that's what they're there to do, to house these bad men and women who are alleged to have committed crimes in Richard Allen's case, who have been convicted and sentenced at the state. When people go to prison, they've already been sentenced, and he's in a prison where all the people have been sentenced. And we heard the testimony from a 5-year guard, a correction officer who's worked at that facility for 5 years. He said in the 5 years that he was there was not one time somebody that was awaiting trial was in this facility. So they're not geared up to handle somebody that's going day to day to court, or, for court. Nobody's getting transported to court. Everyone that's there is handled medically in-house, unless it's some type of operation or some type of surgery of some sort. But everything is handled in those prisons in-house. So there's so many arguments to this, and I feel that the judge is going to rule that they're going to put him in a facility that's local, that is secure, that can handle him. But let me say hello to everybody in the chat, because it's late at night. I'm not going to be live for the full hour. So I want to say hello to Dr. Ed Moskowitz, Phil Leo, good to see you, Deborah Barron, Jane from the country, Let It Be Summer. Listen, trials always take a long time. We got to be patient. Delana, good to see you. Thank you for joining. Can't wait for you to come here to New York and show you guys around, and maybe get an opportunity to meet you, shake your hand. Joey Brooklyn in the chat, Sharon Creates, hello. Diane B is saying that I'm old. I don't know if I'm old, then that means she's old as dirt. If I'm old, Diane B is old as dirt. Just kidding. Love you. Isn't this what defense asked for? Thought did he get a transfer there a couple of months ago? He was ordered to be sent to this prison after he was arrested in October 28th. The judge made a request to have him housed. Judge Benjamin Diener, who recused, he ruled on probable cause affidavit, and Richard Allen he asked Richard Allen to be moved to a state prison for security reasons. And that's the notes that I had. Carroll Circuit Court judge asked for Richard Allen to be moved to a state prison for security concerns. They were concerned that somebody was going to kill him. And basically that's why they sent him to this correctional facility. I'm going to let the rest of this play because there's a little bit more that I want you guys to hear. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about a couple of things and close up. So let's take a listen.
All right, before we let you go right now at Five Guys, obviously so many people are focused on this trial. We know it was a packed courtroom for people who wanted to see it in person today. Can you share who was there?
Yeah, the line was out the door early this morning. The first people in line to make sure they had a spot inside the courtroom arrived around 5:20. A lot of interest in this case, as you mentioned. We do know the families were there again today. We saw both the families of Abby and Libby. In fact, we saw more family members, I would say, than the last time we were here in Carroll County. It is important to mention we also saw family members of Richard Allen. So it was a full courtroom from what we're told. There were no empty seats available when we were in there earlier today. So a lot of emotion, of course, a lot of anticipation as to what comes next. And I know John Duran's going to walk through that coming up at 6 o'clock.
So there was some pretty good coverage there. We had a little bit of coverage from News Nation tonight, and Court TV also did something. But I wanted to just play a little bit of my next piece that I had set up for you guys. Hold on a second. Let me make sure this is right. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, yeah, this is right. All right, so I want you guys to see this because I think on here they show both of his pictures, the picture from October and then the picture now. And when you see them side by side, it is it's frightening. It's frightening. And like I said, if he continues on the path that he is with his ailing health and the condition that he's in, I'm not so sure that he's going to be around in January to stand trial. But yeah, Fuzzy, it's like night and day. It's like night and day. And, you know, we can argue. I see people in the chat say, well, if you're not eating, this is what happens. But he looks, I've been around listen, my own father, I watched my dad die in front of my eyes from bile duct cancer, right? He had that yellowish tinge to him. His eyes, the whites of his eyes turned yellow. Bile duct cancer is evil, and it happens to only 5% of the American population. And it's a cancer that kills you quick. Just looking at him, that's the look that I got. He gave me that cancer look. But I didn't see him in person. We're looking at a video. But this reporter who was sitting in the courtroom that was close to him said that he looked shallow and hollow, I think, or her words were, he looked hollow. Yeah, he looks awful, awful. So let's let this rip, and then I'll be back with you guys.
Now at 5, a trial date set for Richard Allen in the murders of 2 Delphi girls, a case that's grabbed the attention of the nation and of the world. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rafael Sanchez in for Mark Mullins.
And I'm Nicole Griffin. Allen is being charged in the 2017 Delphi murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. Our Caitlin Kendall was inside that courtroom the entire time today.
Caitlin, the judge didn't hear testimony on key evidence in the case today, right?
Right, Rafael and Nicole. Judge Frengo decided not to hear testimony on ruling out key ballistic evidence in this case, saying she'll hear that on another date. Now, she did set a trial date, as you mentioned. That's set for January 8th of next year. They scheduled it out for at least 3 weeks. Judge Gold only heard testimony on the thought of moving Richard Allen to another facility. Today, Richard Allen walked into the Carroll County courtroom, as he has every single time, in a yellow jumpsuit, his arms bound to his chest, his feet shackled. But today, he looked significantly different than he has. Allen appeared much thinner than before, and that was a main part of the defense's case today, saying the facility in Westfield that he's currently at is just not right for him, citing his mental health and physical health. They also claim that distance was a major inconvenience, and access to Allen, they say, wasn't easy. Several witnesses took to the stand today. In that questioning, it came out that Allen had allegedly made incriminating statements while in the prison about his ties to the deaths of Libby and Abby. Both the defense and prosecuting attorneys admitted to knowing about these supposed confessions, eventually stating that they have been made 5 or 6 times. The defense believes that this is due to his mental and physical state deteriorating. For those reasons, they say the statements shouldn't be considered. However, it was not made clear exactly what those statements were. When it comes to where Allen should be held, the Cass County Sheriff said that he could take him, but said that he didn't want to. The warden at the Westville facility said the way it stands right now, he has no concern over Allen's safety. Now, the state did say that they don't have any problem with Richard Allen moving to another facility, but their only request is that it be held on no bond. Now, the judge said that she will take all of the matters today as when it comes to moving Richard Allen into consideration. We should hear a ruling on that in the coming days. Raphael?
Caitlin, I've attempted to talk to the family. Of course, there's a gag order in this case, so the family not talking to the media. There was mention about documents being unsealed today. Did the judge decide on that? Because as we know, those documents have been closed. The public hasn't been able to see them. We haven't been able to see them. So what happened today on the issue of those documents?
Yeah, Raphael, a lot of people have been talking about those documents that have been sealed. People just want to see what it is about this case. The judge ruled very early on this morning that she would unseal a number of those documents, including pleadings that have been submitted to the court. We should expect all of those documents that are being unsealed by midweek next week. You mentioned the gag order. The judge was sure to remind both the family, anyone involved in the case, and the lawyers that they are still under that gag order, meaning they are not allowed to talk about this case outside of what's discussed inside the courtroom. I'm live in Carroll County. Raphael?
Caitlin, we know that so well because we keep asking questions and they say no.
So it sounds familiar, right? A gag order. There's so many gag orders in so many different trials. But yeah, listen, nobody here is saying, and including myself, that I feel sorry for Richard Allen. I don't feel sorry for him. Again, the corrections department, the Department of Corrections, they are going to look at his physical health. He's not just being he's not being tortured. He's not he's getting medical services. We know that from hearing from Connie from the Civilians Corrections Academy. Connie Aileen, she's on she's on with us all the time. These prisoners receive probably better medical attention sometimes, or more frequent medical attention than what the common folk get. So, if he's starving himself, in fact, not eating, that's one thing. If he has, God forbid, like I said, cancer, because I only say God forbid because I don't wish that on my worst enemy. I don't wish cancer onto anyone. It's a very evil thing. But at the end of the day, if there is something physically wrong with him, the facility is not going to, they're not going to just ignore that. So this may be a situation where he's just not eating and is sick from not eating. So when they talk about releasing some of the evidence, and this young reporter reported that they will, in the next week or so, be issuing some documents and unsealing some documents, which, if you've been following this case or any of the cases, an unsealing of documents is exciting, to say the least, because you want to hear what they're talking about. What do they have? But as I'm talking to you guys, I'm trying to search for a picture of Richard Allen, Richard Allen, and I want it so badly to show you because I had a side by side. Okay, so Here's one that I could show you. This is the picture of him in October when he was first arrested. So this is just the interview with the superintendent, but I wanted to show you, the picture of him. So here it is. This is what he looked like October 28th of 2022. I mean, I could put this full screen for you guys so you could get a better look at it, but that's there. And we saw what he looks like now, right? This is pretty extreme. Pretty extreme, I would say, right? So let's see if I can get a picture of him up quick.
"20 minutes from Delphi."
So here he is now. I mean,
Currently being held in.
look at that. So, Deco Peyton T, I hope this answered your question. How does he look now? Natasha, again, you could be right. This could be his manipulative way of taking charge and saying, you know what? I'm sunk. They got me. I'm going to either be going to jail or being put to death if found guilty of the murders, right? So he might just have thrown the towel in and said, you know what? I'm just going to starve myself to death. But I don't think, in prison, again, in prison or in a jail, they're not going to let that happen. If he gets to the point where he doesn't eat, they're going to give him IV, and he's going to be. They might even put a feeding tube in his stomach. So there's ways to keep somebody like him alive in a controlled environment. So all of this stuff is debatable, but I wanted to play a piece from News Nation before I wrapped up with you guys, because there was an attorney on for like 4 minutes with News Nation from his car, and he did a pretty damn good job of his name is Bob Moda. He's a defense attorney, and he's the host of Defense Diaries podcast. He does a pretty good job here of wrapping.
So as we mentioned, today's hearing.
Hold on, of wrapping up. I'm telling the reporter that I'm playing this piece. I'm telling her, hold on a minute, young lady. He does a great job of giving his analogy of what took place yesterday. Susan King, thank you for the $20 super chat. A panel found that Jeffrey Dahmer was competent to stand trial. He ate people. Allen's going to be just fine. Susan, I think you're right. Let's unpack that. Let's unpack that. Sending you a lot of love, you and Chris. I've been communicating with you back and forth. Her husband is fighting for his life. So, and to Marie, sending you strength, prayers, positive vibes. Marie Hernandez is in the chat. I'm just sending you a lot of love and a lot of my support and the entire community here, Crime Time with DutyRon. Susan does have a great point, but let's listen to this piece because I think this will leave us with some of our questions answered. So let's take a listen.
Focused on Allen's. So as we mentioned, today's hearing focused on Allen's current mental and physical state and the motion to have him moved to another prison. Bob Mata is a defense attorney and host of the podcast Defense Diaries, and he joins us now live. Bob, thank you so much for being here. We'd like to start with the prosecutor saying that Allen had confessed to the murders of Abby and Libby 5 or 6 times. So how did the defense respond to that?
They immediately stood up and asked for a sidebar. Basically what was going on is that they had the warden of Westville Penitentiary, where he is currently being housed, on the stand. And during the course of the questioning, the prosecutor said, look, we know that he's made 5 or 6 confessions to the murders of the girls. And at that point, defense counsel Rizzi stood up and asked for a sidebar. They went up for about 3 minutes. They came back and there was no further discussion. The only other thing that was mentioned was a question that was asked by the state about letters that Richard Allen had written to the warden. So the inference, I think, may be that he confessed in writing to the warden. Now, that's a bit of inference on my part, but that was the follow-up question right after he mentioned the fact that there had been 5 to 6 confessions while in custody.
Wow. And we know you just came from the courtroom. We really appreciate this up-to-the-minute report. You got to see Richard Allen in person. Did you notice anything different about him?
He is completely emaciated. I've been in there for the last 3 appearances.
Yeah. So this defense attorney was in the courtroom. So he now is giving his description of Richard Allen, and he said he's completely emaciated. Now, those are strong words, right? We see him on camera being walked slowly in, and he looked frail, and he looked like he was having a hard time walking. But this guy saw him up close and personal. Lisa Kleckner, good to see you. Thank you for joining. Florida Pete, Phil Leo, Joey Brooklyn, Love Wins. These are powerful words that Mr. Mata is saying. So let's take another listen. Unsolved Crimes Uncovered. Great to see you. Thank you for joining.
Got to see Richard Allen in person. Did you notice anything different about him?
He is completely emaciated. I've been in there for the last 3 appearances, and he looked like he had lost about 40 pounds. And moreover, and more disturbing, was the fact that his eyes just looked vacant. He did not look right. I fully anticipate there's going to be a challenge to his competency imminently. He looked off. Like, he walked right by me on multiple occasions, and you can just see it in his eyes. I've had a case in Omaha where I defended a man named Anthony Garcia, and it was the same look he had. And I learned after the fact that they had been tranquilizing my client every time they were bringing him into the courtroom. And this, I'm not implying that's what they're doing, but there's something off with them.
Wow. Can you give us a sense of the atmosphere? How busy was it?
Tranquilizing his client. I mean, that's a huge statement to make. And I don't know of any prisons that intentionally tranquilize a client, a prisoner. I got to ask Anthony Ganji from Tier Talk about that. But that sounds really effed up. I gotta put that back. And I'm gonna ask some of my online detectives to Google his former client's name. And I got to do some research on that case, because tranquilizing someone intentionally, a Department of Corrections facility or a jail. I mean, if his client was on trial, that means he was in a local jail. That means the county jail was tranquilizing. Those are some big words. I don't know.
Same look he had, and I learned after the fact that they had been and imminently. He looked off. Like, he walked right by me on multiple occasions, and you can just see it in his eyes. I've had a case in Omaha where I defended a man named Anthony Garcia, and it was the same look he had. And I learned after the fact that they had been tranquilizing my client every time they were bringing him into the courtroom. And this, I'm not implying that's what they're doing, but there's something off with them.
Wow. Can you give us a sense of the atmosphere? How busy was it? Were there family members inside?
Yeah,
Omaha,
it was packed. So the right side was for the press and the media, and the left side of the courtroom was exclusively for family members, loved ones, and friends of both Libby.
Yeah, but you see, you're saying they did that for Lori Vallow, but they had to send her to the cuckoo farm for over a month or more to get her right, because in Idaho, you can't use the insanity defense. So Lori Vallow was at the cuckoo farm. She was at the wacko farm, and they had to make her right legally. She had to be either put on drugs to make her right to stand trial. The cuckoo farm, yes. She was at the nut house. However you want to say it.
Libby and Abby.
So we did not get to hear about the ballistic evidence. Do we know what's next with that aspect of this case?
So the way that the judge put it, and she addressed it early on in the hearing, before we got to the issue of his current incarceration, she said that they wanted the defense to file what they call a notice of a Franks hearing. Now, a Franks hearing is where they're challenging a search warrant, saying that law enforcement lied in order to get the warrant. So she asked for that to be noticed up in order for that to move forward. So I don't know if that's going to be connected. I was obviously disappointed. I was anticipating that motion to suppress was going to go forward today. And with respect to your little piece that you had done there, I just want to point out that this was an unspent casing. This wasn't a casing that was shot through a barrel. So the tool markings, they're attacking the ballistics as it was and how it's been for the past few decades. This is even like more infrequently used. And I don't know that there's ever been a conviction based on a casing that's been ejected from the weapon and not fired through the weapon. So that's what they're going to be attacking. It was interesting that the judge did ask for that Franks hearing notice, because that makes me believe that is somehow related to the fact that they're going to have this hearing, and she wants that Franks hearing notice filed. And I can tell you they did not set a date for that hearing at the end. She reset the trial date from January, it's set for now January 8th through the 24th, with jury selection to happen the 8th through, they believe, the 11th or 12th, for like 3 or 4 days, potentially.
Well,
So 3 or 4 days, January 8th to the 12th for jury selection, and then 3 weeks or so for the trial. So a lot of good information from this guest. Let's listen to the rest of this.
I know you'll be following it closely. We really appreciate you popping in for the show. Bob Mata.
My pleasure.
Bob Mata. Yeah, definitely informative there. So I want to just get your guys' feelings on this. Do you feel that Richard Allen is going to be fit for trial come January of 2024? That's 6.5 months. Let me know in the comment section, or also while we're here live, put a 1 in the chat if you think he's going to be competent and physically ready for trial in January. Put a 1. If you don't think he will, put a 2. I think that most of us can agree that if he continues on the path that he is right now, come 6 months in the future, he's not going to be able to stand up. So I put a 2 in the chat myself. Debbie is putting a 1. Another 40 pounds and he won't be here too long. Yeah, I agree. It's just unfortunate, because I want to hear what evidence they have. I want to hear this trial kick off. I want to listen to what the prosecution has on Richard Allen. I mean, listen, he's 50 years old, married with a child. His wife is still defending him and is still at his side, or is showing up at his court hearings. I believe somebody said that his wife was there yesterday, but I want to hear all of what they have evidentiary wise against him. We know that in this country and in most places, you're innocent until proven guilty. So right now, the presumption of innocence is with him, and the state has to prove their case. And this is a case that we want to see proven. But without him alive, there won't be a trial. If he dies in prison, there won't be any trial. So, be that as it may, I appreciate you guys coming late here at night. I want to go to the chat and look at your guys' questions. If you have a question, put it in, highlight it, And thank you to everyone who's given super chats. If you're not yet subscribed, please consider giving this video, first off, if you're here now, a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below in the comment section. Follow me and Ed on all things social media. One word, DutyRon. Again, Richard Allen, someone who blended in the Delphi community and was able to go undetected for so long. And this is what has us all scratching our heads, is like, what do they got? What do they got on this guy? They had enough. They had enough. Cherry Hill says, I like the late night shows. Ava, good to see you. Fuzzy Doxy. Fuzzy Doxy is the reason the show is going on right now. So thank you. Ava Hawkshaw, thank you. Thank you. And listen, anybody that's going through a rough patch or a rough time, it's always easy for you to reach out to me. Go to DutyRon.com, send me a message. I communicate with a lot of you guys. I communicate with a lot. And I always like to apologize to you guys because my work schedule has been so crazy. I can't even give you guys the car inside my vehicle lives that I used to do with you guys. I don't even have a chance to do that because work has been so busy. Emily 53, always good to see you. Southwest 4x4 Explorers, thank you for being here. Allen has been carrying his guilt since February 14th of 2017. That's a pretty strong statement, but if in fact that's true, it does take its toll, right? Yeah, Bethany says, I want to see all the videos. I want to see all the things. We want to see everything. Natasha is too kind. Natasha Richardson says, you're a sweet guy, DutyRon. Love you and your fam. Thank you. Thank you. Love you right back. But yeah, so my work schedule has been screwy. It's been crazy. Nat B from Canada says, question, DutyRon, do you think this was his first time committing a crime? It would be my speculation, but most people who commit one or more murders or, double homicides, more times than not, it's not their first go around. So if I had to guess, I would say maybe it's a possibility it's not. But I think in this case, he was a part of that community for so long. And I think that honest and truly, this was his first go around. And that's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong, but you asked Nat B from Canada and I answered. So I say no. Unsolved crime says no with a big fat exclamation point. Matty Boy Sully, great to see you. Thank you. Oh, and happy belated birthday to Dr. Ed Moskowitz. Dr. Ed is here in the chat with Just Julie, his wife. They both are resident. Dr. Ed is the Crime Time with DutyRon's resident doctor. He is here as a family member, as a supporter, as a doctor. So Dr. Ed, happy birthday. Many, many more. His birthday was just a couple of short days ago. So a lot of people think it was his first time. Let It Be Summer says, DutyRon, do you think he might plead guilty now? I don't think so. Wasn't he a regular drinker? I heard that he was a drinker, anything is possible, but his weight loss is extreme. And we're not just relying on what we're seeing. We're hearing people who saw him in person in court, and they said it looks bad. It looks bad. Jill says, if it was his first, why stop? Some people that commit murders, whether it's one or two or more, it's their first go around, and they either had rage or anger issues or sexual issues or a whole host of things that lead them to do this one time, and they just get frightened and like a turtle, go into a shell and then just make like it never happened and try to just skate and go about their daily lives. And that's what he did. I feel that he went about his daily lives and thought he was going to get away with it, because there's so many other people that were, look at Ron Logan, look at this Keegan Kline freak, and all of these other people were implicated in this. So he felt like, oh, well, I'm scot-free, but he wasn't, you know? So be that as it may, everybody, opinions are like, you know what? Everyone's got one, right? Opinions are like a-holes. Everyone's got one. And the bottom line is it's all speculation on all of our behalves. We don't know. We're not in the mind of Richard Allen. Only he knows what he did or didn't do. And at the end of the day, we will find out if this trial does kick off. Nothing but love. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. She says, that's right. Here's another question coming in from Patsy Klein. Question: how likely is it that they performed an expert analysis and test of his voice compared to the voice on Libby's cell phone, the down the hill voice? I would think that they threw the kitchen sink at his voice and did an analysis. And they have, as we know, many recordings of him from at the jail, at the prison, probably from interviews when he was first arrested. And I'm sure that the FBI and all of the voice analysis folks have thrown the kitchen sink at this thing. But that's a great question, Patsy Klein. I'm sure that they did. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap it up. I want to just, again, remind you that I've got a lot of things in the hopper planned for you guys. I want to cover the Gabby Petito family's civil suit. There's been some developments in that case. I want to talk to you about that. Summer Wells, we had the TBI put out a aged progression photo of Summer Wells. That's our, the case from down in Hawkins County in Tennessee. There's been some movement, not movement, but some information. Really, it was nothing that they put out information-wise, but the TBI put a statement out the other day. I want to get into that and talk about it. There's some movement in the Koberger case, some things happening legally, some things that his defense is making requests for. There's a lot of stuff brewing, and we have Chad Daybell's trial coming up, and there's so much stuff going on. It's so hard to stay with it. Lieutenant Pete, thank you. And if I don't come live, which I'm sure I will before Father's Day, this Sunday is Father's Day. To the great fathers out there that do the right thing by their families and their kids, have a great, great Sunday if I don't come live on the air before then, which I know I will. But to all the dads out there that are doing the right thing, that are being moms when they have to be, and are being good fathers, kudos to you. To all the scumbag fathers that are out there, you get the double bird from me, like the Adam Montgomerys, the Trezell Wests, the Larry Miliete. I can just go on and on. The Don Wells, they all get the double finger from me. But to the good ones out there that are doing the right thing, like the Joey Brooklyns and the Pete Pranzos and myself, who love our children and our families, have a great day. Sit back, have your favorite adult beverage, barbecue, hot dogs, hamburgers, steaks, whatever you want to do. Kick back and relax. And that's all I got to say about that. Hey, I want to just say stand by for a message from our security team. That's the cop team. Kara, that's Ed Wallace's dog. Oscar, that's my little bastard. Popeye, my other little bastard over here. And that's the cop team. Kara, Oscar, and Popeye. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace and love. Crime Time with DutyRon.